It was a Sunday morning when the email came in. I was sipping coffee on my porch, thinking about whether to plant azaleas or tulips in Mom's old flower bed, when my phone buzzed. Subject: final closing details, 3-way split. It was from my father. Confused, I opened it, expecting some family update or maybe a forwarded joke. He still liked sending those. But what I saw made my heart stop. It was a thread, an ongoing conversation between my dad, my siblings Robert and Janice, and a realtor. They were finalizing the sale of the family house, the one I had paid property taxes on for over a decade, the house I sacrificed my own retirement for, and in the middle of it all, one sentence burned into my brain. Cathy's payments were just rent. She's not entitled to anything. I read it again and again. Like if I stared hard enough, the words might disappear, that somehow this was a mistake. But it wasn't. My entire family was in on it. Selling the house, dividing the money, without me. I wasn't part of the plan. I was just useful. Have you ever been betrayed by the very people you gave everything to? Stick with me. Because what happened next shattered everything I thought I knew about loyalty, love, and what it really means to fight for what's yours. I was born and raised in Savannah, Georgia, in a house that felt more like a living memory than just a building. A white colonial, with green shutters and a wraparound porch that creaked in the summer heat. It had been in our family since the 1940s, passed down from my grandfather to my father. Every corner whispered childhood memories, my first skinned knee on the gravel driveway, Christmas mornings in the den, and the faint scent of magnolias from the tree outside my bedroom window. I'm Catherine, but most folks call me Cathy. I'm 61 now, a retired nurse who spent most of her life caring for others, both in hospitals and at home. I never married, never had children. It wasn't that I didn't want to. Life just had other plans. And for a long time, I thought my purpose was simple: to serve, to support, to give. So when my parents started struggling financially after retirement, it wasn't even a question. I stepped in. They had fixed incomes, rising medical bills, and property taxes that felt like a slow bleed. I told myself, they took care of me. Now it's my turn. The house meant everything to them, and to me. So I began paying the property taxes, not just once or twice, but every single quarter for 11 years. I kept the receipts in a fireproof box. I also helped with maintenance, replacing the roof, repainting the porch, cleaning the gutters. I visited once a month, sometimes more, bringing groceries and checking in on repairs. It wasn't easy. I was still working full-time at the time, and Savannah wasn't exactly around the corner. I even delayed my retirement by 2 years just to make sure I could keep covering the bills. My siblings, Robert and Janice, did nothing. They lived in other states, claimed they were struggling with their own finances, but that didn't stop Robert from buying a boat or Janice from posting spa weekends on Facebook. Still, I kept quiet. I didn't do it for recognition. I did it because it was right. There was never a formal agreement, but it was always understood, at least I thought so, that I was preserving something for the family. And maybe one day, when the time came, the house would be mine. Not as a reward, but as a continuation. I'd live out my days in the home that raised me. It gave me peace. Every holiday, every birthday, I was the one who showed up. I never missed a Mother's Day brunch or a Father's Day phone call. I brought pies in the fall and helped string lights at Christmas. My parents would say things like, "We don't know what we'd do without you," or "You've always been the dependable one." Words that felt warm at the time, but now I see them for what they were. I should have seen the signs. The way they got cagey when I asked about long-term plans, how they brushed off my questions about wills or estate planning with vague reassurances. I didn't want to believe my own parents, my own family, could be dishonest with me, that they'd see my sacrifices not as acts of love, but as obligations. But looking back now, I realize I wasn't part of the legacy. I was just the caretaker, the placeholder, the one who made it easier for them to wait until the price was right to sell. And by the time that email came in, the plan was already in motion. They just never thought I'd find out. The first real red flag came on a rainy afternoon in March. I'd driven down to the house to help Mom fix a leaky bathroom faucet. As I pulled into the driveway, I noticed a well-dressed couple standing at the edge of the porch, peering into the windows. The man held a clipboard, and the woman, wearing sleek heels far too fancy for a casual visit, snapped photos of the exterior with her phone. I stepped out of the car cautiously. "Can I help you?" I asked. They both jumped slightly. The man introduced himself as Kevin, a local real estate agent. Said he was meeting the homeowners for a showing. My stomach turned. "The homeowners?" I repeated. He glanced at his phone. "Yes, Mr. and Mrs. Donovan. We scheduled this last week." I forced a polite smile and stepped aside as my parents opened the front door, looking utterly startled to see me. "Oh, Cathy," my mother stammered. "You didn't say you were coming today." "I didn't think I had to," I said, my voice cooler than intended. They waved it off, said they were just testing the waters, seeing what the market looked like. No intentions to sell yet, just exploring. But their eyes didn't meet mine. And I noticed the living room had been staged, throw pillows fluffed, family photos removed, scented candles burning. That night, I couldn't sleep. I told myself I was overreacting, that I was being paranoid. But then a week later came the email. It was a forwarded message from my dad, meant for Robert and Janice. Instead, it landed in my inbox. At first I thought it was a mistake, a random forward, but when I opened it, my entire body went cold. It was a thread about the house, about the sale, about how once the closing was final, they'd divide the money 3 ways. Robert, Janice, Dad. There was no mention of me. And then came the line that shattered me. "Cathy's been covering the taxes. Think of it as rent. She's not entitled to proceeds. Just rent. 11 years of my life, $48,000. Memories, holidays, deferred dreams, and they boiled it down to rent." I felt like I'd been sucker punched. I scrolled further. More threads, more agreements. They'd been planning this for months. Quiet meetings, realtor visits, projected figures, and all 3 of them, Dad, Robert, Janice, seemed perfectly fine with erasing me from the equation. I stared at the screen for hours, the cursor blinking like a heartbeat. It felt like mourning. The grief wasn't just for the house. It was for the relationship I thought I had with my family. The version of them that I had loved never really existed. I didn't reply to the email. I printed it out, highlighted every damning word. I went to the fireproof box, pulled every receipt, every check copy. I lined them up on my kitchen table like exhibits in a trial, and I waited. The next weekend, I drove back to the house. No announcement, no heads up. When I walked through the door, they were in the dining room, drinking coffee like nothing had changed. I placed the printed email in front of my father. No one spoke for a full 10 seconds. "I think you sent this to the wrong child," I said, my voice level. My dad looked at the paper, blinked slowly, then sat back in his chair. "Well," he muttered, "that's unfortunate." "Unfortunate," I repeated. "That's all you have to say?" "It's our house, Cathy. We're allowed to sell it." "And my payments?" "You helped your parents. That's what good children do." My heart cracked open. Mom tried to chime in. "We never promised you anything, sweetie." Robert, on speakerphone, added, "You're being greedy. You don't see Janice or me throwing a fit." That's because they weren't the ones who paid for everything. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just stood there, still and calm, and said 7 words that changed everything. "I'm getting a lawyer. This isn't over." I didn't sleep the night after that confrontation. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling fan spinning slowly overhead, playing every word over and over in my mind, like a broken recording. That's what good children do. It's our house. You're being greedy. The words echoed like bullets ricocheting in my chest. It wasn't just betrayal, it was erasure. I'd spent over a decade believing I was helping to preserve something sacred, a legacy, a home. But to them, I'd been a convenient fool, someone to lean on until they were ready to cash out. By Monday morning, I had an appointment with a real estate attorney. Her name was Meredith Vance, sharp, composed, and surprisingly compassionate. I laid out everything: the payments, the receipts, the email thread, even voice messages from past years where Dad had said, "We couldn't do this without you." She listened without interrupting, then leaned back and said, "You have a case." I blinked. "Really? You don't own the property, but you have what's called an equitable interest. Your financial contributions, made over time, under the belief you were preserving a future stake, could justify a lien." A lien. That word carried weight I hadn't expected. It meant leverage. It meant they couldn't just sell and disappear with the money. It meant they had to acknowledge me, at least in court. So we filed. A formal notice of lien was recorded with the county clerk, backed by every single canceled check and document I'd provided. Within 2 weeks, the title company handling the sale was forced to pause the closing, and suddenly, I wasn't just the good daughter anymore. I was the obstacle. The phone calls started immediately. My father's voice, colder than I'd ever heard it. "This is disgraceful, Cathy. You're dragging our family through mud." I said nothing. Janice sent a furious email accusing me of attacking our parents in their old age. Robert left a voicemail. "You'll regret this. Family is everything. You're burning bridges you can't rebuild." But I knew those bridges were never real, just illusions built on guilt and silence. The realtor emailed me separately, professionally awkward, but firm. "We'll have to delay the closing until the lien is resolved." I knew what that meant. The buyers might walk away, and good. Let them. Let them all sit in the mess they created. The hardest part, though, wasn't the legal process. It was the silence from my mother. Not a word, not a message, not even a passive-aggressive Facebook comment. She just disappeared. That hurt more than I expected. She'd always been the gentler one, the buffer between Dad's pride and my loyalty. I thought, naively, I guess, that she'd eventually call to apologize, to explain, to say something that would soften the blow. But she didn't. Instead, Meredith received an offer from their attorney, dropped the lien, and they'd give me $5,000 as a thank you gift. I nearly laughed. Meredith didn't even blink before sending back a counter. Full reimbursement of all payments made, plus interest. Or we go to court. 3 days passed. Then a week. Then another email arrived, not from the lawyer, but from my mother. One line. "We didn't mean to hurt you. Please stop." It felt more like a plea for convenience than an apology. I stared at it for a long time. Then I deleted it. There are moments in life when something breaks inside you, quietly, cleanly, and you realize there's no gluing it back together. That was mine. Whatever love I'd been clinging to, whatever hope I had left that they might see me, really see me for who I was and what I'd done. It died in that moment. This wasn't just about money, it was about dignity, about being treated like a person, not a utility. And I wasn't going to let them take that from me. Not anymore. Meredith moved quickly. With the lien officially in place, we had leverage, and leverage meant options. First, we sent a demand letter to my parents' attorney. It included a breakdown of every single payment I had made, dates, amounts, copies of checks, tax records, even handwritten notes from my father acknowledging my support. We emphasized the intent behind those payments, not charity, not rent, but a long-term investment in the family home. We requested full reimbursement, $48,312.19, plus 5% annual interest, totaling just over $60,000. They didn't respond right away. Instead, I started receiving calls from the realtor, increasingly panicked. The buyers were threatening to walk. They'd offered above market price and were already weeks into escrow. Now, with the lien in place and no resolution in sight, they were considering pulling out. I didn't care. Let the deal fall apart. Let the whole thing rot. Meanwhile, Robert tried a different approach. He emailed me a long, winding message about family unity and how our parents were too old for this stress. He ended it with, "You've made your point. Now let's be civil. Accept the offer and move on." The offer, at that point, had risen to $15,000. Still insulting. Still nowhere near fair. I didn't reply. Instead, Meredith suggested a mediation session. "We can draw this out in court for months," she said, "or we can force them to face you directly." I agreed, not because I thought we'd find resolution, but because I wanted them to say it, to my face. I wanted them to own what they did. We met at a neutral office in downtown Savannah. Conference room, legal pads, bottled water. A mediator named Charles, calm and polite, the kind of man who could probably talk two rattlesnakes out of fighting. My parents sat across from me, their attorney in tow. My father wouldn't meet my eyes. My mother looked tired, not sad, just worn down. Janice joined via video call, her voice clipped and condescending from the start. "This is a waste of time," she huffed. "Cathy's being ridiculous." Charles opened the session by asking each side to state their position. I spoke clearly, without shaking. I supported my parents financially for 11 years, under the understanding that I was helping preserve my childhood home and my future. Now that home is being sold without my knowledge, and I've been intentionally excluded from the proceeds. I'm not here to beg. I'm here to enforce what I'm owed. Dad finally looked up, face flushed. "We didn't force you to pay, Cathy. You volunteered." "You encouraged me," I snapped. "You told me I was the only one who cared. You let me believe I was doing this for us, not just you." He muttered, "Helping your parents isn't a contract." "No," I said quietly, "but you don't get to rewrite the past to suit your pocket." Janice jumped in again. "You think this house is worth your bitterness? You're blowing up the family over money." Charles held up a hand. "Let's keep this respectful." Eventually, their attorney asked for a recess. He and my father stepped into the hallway. 10 minutes later, they returned with a final offer, $62,000. Full reimbursement of taxes and interest in exchange for dropping the lien immediately so the sale could proceed. I said nothing at first. Then I stood. And I nodded. "I'll accept. But I want it in writing, today." They agreed. 3 days later, the funds were wired to my account. No ceremony, no apology, just numbers on a screen and a silence that felt like a funeral. I stared at the bank app for a long time. I thought I'd feel triumphant, vindicated. But the truth? I just felt empty. Because winning meant accepting that the people I loved most had chosen money over me. It meant knowing that for over a decade, they smiled at me while quietly planning my erasure. It meant I'd never walk through that old house again and feel warmth. Just walls. Just betrayal. But the money gave me something they never could. Freedom. Within a month, I found a small cottage about 20 minutes from the coast. 2 bedrooms, a sunroom that caught the morning light. It wasn't grand or historic, but it was mine. Paid in full. No one could take it from me. No one could twist it into a weapon. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't someone's crutch. I wasn't someone's fallback. I was whole, and I had done it by standing up when it mattered. The house sold 3 weeks after the lien was cleared. I didn't drive by. I didn't want to see strangers walking through the front door I used to open with a key shaped like a tiny bird. I didn't want to imagine the new owners tearing down the swing I'd helped Dad build when I was 10. That place had already been taken from me once. There was no need to relive it. But what came after? That was the part no one prepared me for. They stopped speaking to me entirely. There was no farewell, no attempt to mend. My number was blocked on Robert's phone. Janice unfriended me and posted a vague quote about snakes in the family that mutual friends pretended not to see. My parents changed their address and never shared it with me. Just gone. As if I'd never existed. And for a while, I told myself I didn't care. I focused on settling into my new cottage. The place was small, but it had character. Peeling paint on the shutters, a wild garden out back, and a squeaky front gate that reminded me of the one we used to have on Habersham Street. I painted the kitchen myself, bought secondhand furniture, planted marigolds in the yard. Every nail I drove into the wall felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. But grief is funny. It doesn't hit you all at once. It waits. It creeps. I remember the first holiday season in the new house. I made cocoa, lit candles, put on a vinyl record of old carols, and then I sat at the table alone, staring at my reflection in the window, and I cried, not for the house, but for the little girl who used to think her family was unbreakable, for the woman who gave everything she had and got cut out like a stranger. Months passed, seasons changed. Then, nearly a year later, I got a letter in the mail, handwritten, no return address. I opened it slowly, half expecting venom, but it wasn't that. It was from my mother. Cathy, we're not doing well. The money's gone. Poor decisions, I suppose. Health is failing too. I know you probably hate us. I don't blame you. I just wanted you to know I think of you every day. Love, Mom. That was it. No ask for money, no offer to reconcile. Just that. I sat with the letter in my lap for a long time. It was wrinkled where her hand had shaken, a smudge of ink near the bottom, maybe from tears, maybe from arthritis. I thought about throwing it away. Instead, I folded it neatly and placed it in the drawer next to my bed. A week later, I sent a card, no return address. No message beyond 4 simple words. Take care of yourself. That was the only olive branch I had left. The truth is, I don't wish them harm. I don't want revenge anymore. I got what was owed, I kept my dignity, and I walked away with my soul intact. But I also learned something the hard way. Family is not defined by blood. It's defined by how they show up when it costs them something. And sometimes, protecting yourself isn't cruel, it's necessary. Now, I walk along the coast every morning with my coffee. I breathe easier. I sleep better. I decorate my little home for holidays without worrying who approves. Sometimes the neighbors invite me to dinner. Sometimes I just curl up with a book and my cat and let the silence hold me like an old friend. I'm not bitter. I'm just free. And that, I've learned, is the kind of peace that no inheritance could ever buy. It's been 5 years. The cottage by the coast still stands, weathered by storms, kissed by salt air, and filled with a kind of peace I never thought I'd earn. I spend my mornings tending to the garden, my afternoons volunteering at the local clinic, and my evenings writing postcards I may or may not send. My family? We don't speak. I get the occasional holiday card from Janice now, signed only with her name, no message. Robert remains silent. My parents? Last I heard, they moved into a small apartment after mismanaging the proceeds from the house sale. The money went quickly. Bad investments, medical bills, maybe guilt-fueled spending. But I don't reach out, and they don't ask. I think for a long time I believed forgiveness required reconciliation, that healing meant reopening doors. But I've come to understand something different. Forgiveness isn't about letting people back in. It's about letting yourself go forward. I forgave them, not because they deserved it, but because I deserved peace. I deserved to wake up each morning without resentment gnawing at my chest. And I do. The lesson? Never confuse sacrifice with obligation. Never let guilt mask as love. And never hand over your worth to people who only value you when you're useful. You can be kind, you can be generous, but you can also set boundaries. And sometimes, walking away is the most loving thing you can do. For yourself. So here I am, at 66, sipping tea in a house I paid for, surrounded by friends I chose, no longer trying to prove my loyalty to people who couldn't see it. It's quiet. But it's mine.